Emma Thompson sat at her small wooden kitchen table, surrounded by papers that seemed to multiply every day: bills for electricity, water, groceries. And her father's medicine covered every inch of the surface. At 32 years old, Emma felt like she was carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. The clock on the wall showed 6:30 in the evening. Emma had just returned from another 12-hour shift at the department store where she worked as a manager. Her back ached from standing all day, and her head pounded from dealing with difficult customers and staff problems. She rubbed her tired eyes and tried to focus on the numbers in front of her. 6 months ago, everything had changed when her father George suffered a stroke. The doctors said he was lucky to survive, but he could no longer live alone. Emma had no choice but to bring him to live with her and Lucy in their tiny two-bedroom house. Now George needed help with almost everything: getting dressed, taking his medication, and moving round in his wheelchair. Emma loved her father dearly, but caring for him while working full-time and raising her teenage daughter alone was exhausting. She barely had time to breathe, let alone think about her own needs. Every morning she woke up before sunrise to help George get ready for the day. Every evening she came home to cook dinner, help with household tasks, and make sure everyone had what they needed. The front door opened with a loud creak, and Lucy walked in. Emma's 16-year-old daughter looked as tired as Emma felt. Lucy's school uniform was wrinkled. Her hair was messy, and her heavy school bag dragged behind her. On the floor, Emma glanced up from the bills and noticed the dark circles under Lucy's eyes. But her own exhaustion made it hard to focus on anything except the financial problems in front of her. Lucy dropped her bag by the door and walked slowly to the kitchen table. She sat down in the chair across from her mother, her hands folded in her lap. Emma could see that something was bothering her daughter, but she felt too overwhelmed to deal with another problem. "Mom, I need to tell you something," Lucy said in a quiet voice. She looked nervous and kept glancing down at the table instead of making eye contact with Emma. Emma did not look up from the pile of bills. She was trying to figure out how to pay for George's new medication while also covering the rent and utilities. Her patience was already thin after a difficult day at work, and she could feel her stress levels rising. "What is it now, Lucy?" Emma said with a sigh. "I really don't have time for more problems. Can't you see I'm trying to figure out how we're going to pay for everything this month?" Lucy took a deep breath and seemed to gather her courage. "I'm failing my math class, and my English teacher wants to schedule a meeting with you. She sent her a note home today." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. She looked up from the bills for the first time since Lucy had entered the room. Her daughter's face was pale and worried, but all Emma could think about was how this would add even more stress to her already impossible situation. Emma felt something snap inside her. All the pressure from work, all the worry about money, all the exhaustion from caring for George, and now this news about Lucy's grades. It was too much. She could feel her anger building like a volcano ready to explode. "Are you kidding me right now?" Emma's voice rose louder than she intended. "I work myself to death for this family, and this is what I get in return. You're just throwing everything away." Lucy's eyes widened with shock and hurt, but Emma could not stop herself. The words kept pouring out, fueled by months of built-up frustration and fear. "You're selfish and ungrateful, Lucy. Do you have any idea what I sacrifice for you every single day? I never had the chances and opportunities that you have." Emma stood up from her chair, her voice getting louder and more harsh with each word. "I had to drop out of school when I was 17 to work full-time because my mother got sick. I never got to finish my education or follow my dreams. And you just waste it all like it means nothing." Lucy's face crumpled as if she had been slapped. Tears began to fill her eyes, and her bottom lip started to tremble. She had never seen her mother this angry before, and the cruel words cut deep into her heart. "I hate you," Lucy shouted back. Her voice breaking with emotion, she jumped up from her chair so quickly that it almost fell over. "I hate you so much." Lucy ran toward the stairs, her footsteps heavy and fast. Emma heard her daughter's bedroom door slam with such force that the whole house seemed to shake. The sound echoed through the small rooms like a gunshot. A moment later, George wheeled his chair into the kitchen. Emma's father had heard every word of the argument, and his face showed deep sadness and concern. He looked at his daughter with eyes that held both love and disappointment. "Emma, love," George said softly, his voice gentle but serious. "Those words you just spoke, they cut deeper than you know. Words like that leave scars that last forever." Emma suddenly realized what she had done. She looked round the kitchen, at the scattered bills on the floor, at her father's worried face, at the empty chair where Lucy had been sitting. The silence upstairs felt heavy and painful. Emma collapsed back into her chair, her hands shaking uncontrollably. She put her head in her hands and felt tears starting to form in her eyes. What had she done to her own daughter? How could she have said such terrible things? Emma woke up the next morning feeling like she had been hit by a truck. Her eyes were red and swollen from crying most of the night. She had tossed and turned in her bed, replaying the terrible argument with Lucy over in her mind. Every harsh word she had spoken felt like a knife twisting in her heart. She walked downstairs to the kitchen, hoping to find Lucy eating breakfast at the table like she did every morning. But the kitchen was empty and cold. The silence felt strange and uncomfortable. Emma looked round and noticed that Lucy's school bag was gone from its usual spot by the door. Her daughter's breakfast plate was still in the cupboard, a newsstand. Clean. George was sitting at the small kitchen table in his wheelchair, slowly sipping his morning tea. His weathered hands shook slightly as he held the cup. He looked up at Emma with sad, understanding eyes when she entered the room. "She didn't eat anything," George said in a gentle voice. "I heard her come downstairs about an hour ago. She just grabbed her school bag and left. Didn't even make herself a piece of toast." Emma felt her stomach twist into knots. Lucy never skipped breakfast, even when she was running late for school. She would grab an apple or a piece of bread to eat on the way. The fact that she had left without eating anything showed how upset she still was. "I was just so tired, Dad," Emma said, sitting down heavily in the chair across from her father. "I felt so overwhelmed with everything. The bills, your care, work problems, and then Lucy's grades on top of everything else. I just snapped." George reached across the table and patted Emma's hand with his own trembling fingers. "I know. Love, I understand that you're carrying a heavy load, but being tired and stressed doesn't heal the hurt that those words caused. Lucy is just a child, and children remember harsh words for a very long time." Emma nodded, knowing her father was right. She had spent most of the night thinking about her own childhood and remembering times when adults had said mean things to her. Those memories still hurt. Even after all these years, Emma got ready for work with a heavy heart. She kept hoping that Lucy would come back downstairs before she left. But there was no sound from her daughter's bedroom. Emma wanted to knock on Lucy's door and apologize, but she was afraid that Lucy would just ignore her or say something hurtful in return. At the department store, Emma tried to focus on her daily tasks, but her mind kept wandering back to the argument during the morning staff meeting. She sat at the conference table but barely heard what anyone was saying. Her assistant manager, James, was talking about the new summer clothing displays, but Emma was thinking about Lucy's hurt face and the way her daughter had run upstairs in tears. "Everything all right?" "Emma?" James asked, looking concerned. You seem miles away today. You haven't said a word during this whole meeting." Emma realized that everyone in the room was looking at her. She quickly forced a smile and tried to appear normal. "Oh, yes, everything is fine. Just some family stuff at home. Nothing I can't handle." But Emma knew she was lying. She could not handle it. The guilt and worry about Lucy was eating away at her, making it impossible to concentrate on anything else as the day went on. Emma's mood got worse and worse. When an elderly customer came to the service desk to complain about a damaged sweater she had bought the week before, Emma lost her patience completely. "Look, lady, these things happen." Emma snapped at the poor woman. "We can't control every single item that goes through the store. Just return it and pick a different one." The customer looked shocked and hurt by Emma's rude tone. James quickly stepped in to help the woman and gave Emma a questioning look. Later that afternoon, when James suggested rearranging the shoe section to make more room for the new spring arrivals, Emma dismissed his idea without even thinking about it. "That's a terrible idea, James. We've had the shoes range that way for years. Don't fix something that isn't broken." Her voice was sharp and dismissive. James looked surprised and a little hurt. He had been working at the store for 3 years and had never seen Emma act so mean and unreasonable. Throughout the rest of the day, Emma noticed that her staff members were avoiding her. They would quickly walk away when they saw her coming, or they would whisper to each other and stop talking when she got close. Everyone was walking on eggshells around her, afraid that she might snap at them the way she had snapped at the customer and James. That evening, Emma came home feeling even worse than when she had left that morning. The house was quiet again, and she could hear George watching television in the living room. She walked into the dining room and stopped suddenly when she saw Lucy's math textbook open on the table. Beside the book was a crumpled piece of paper that looked like it had been thrown away and then smoothed out again. Emma picked up the paper and recognized Lucy's handwriting immediately. As she read the words her daughter had written, Emma felt her heart break into a million pieces. "I try so hard, but I'm not smart like Mum wants me to be. Maybe I should just give up on everything. She thinks I'm useless anyway. So what's the point?" Emma sank into a chair, the paper still in her shaking hands. Tears began to stream down her face as she realized what her angry words had done to her sweet daughter. Lucy was not lazy or ungrateful. She was a scared 16-year-old girl who was struggling in school and needed her mother's support, not her criticism. George wheeled his chair into the dining room and found Emma crying at the table. He looked at the paper in her hands and understood immediately what had happened. "She's hurting, Emma," George said softly, "and so are you. But you're both going to have to find a way to heal together." Emma woke up early the next morning with a heavy heart. She had made a decision during her sleepless night to try to fix things with Lucy. She wanted to apologize properly and explain that she had not meant the terrible things she had said. Emma practiced the words in her head as she made her way downstairs to the kitchen. Lucy was already in the kitchen, moving quickly round the counter. She grabbed a piece of toast from the toaster and spread butter on it while avoiding looking at her mother. Emma could see that Lucy's eyes were still red from crying, but her daughter's face showed no emotion at all. "Lucy, please," Emma said, softly, stepping closer to her daughter. "Can we just sit down and talk for a few minutes? I know I hurt you terribly, and I want to make things right between us." Lucy finally looked up at Emma, but her eyes were cold and distant. It was like looking at a complete stranger instead of the warm, loving daughter Emma had raised for 16 years. "There's nothing to talk about, Mom," Lucy said in a flat, emotionless voice. "You made everything perfectly clear last night. I know exactly what you think of me now." Lucy wrapped her toast in a paper napkin and grabbed her school bag from the chair. She walked toward the front door without looking back at Emma even once. "Lucy, wait," Emma called out. But the front door slammed shut before she could say anything. Else Emma stood alone in the kitchen, feeling like her heart was being crushed. The words Lucy had spoken stung deeply because Emma could hear her own pain and anger reflected in her daughter's voice. Emma realized with horror that she was turning her sweet, sensitive daughter into a cold, distant stranger. The love and warmth that had always existed between them seemed to be disappearing completely. That afternoon, Emma sat with George in their small backyard garden. The spring flowers were beginning to bloom, and the warm sunshine felt good on their faces. George had always found peace in the garden, and Emma hoped that being outside might help her feel less trapped and overwhelmed. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the birds fly from tree to tree. Finally, George cleared his throat and began to speak in his gentle, thoughtful way. "When your mother was sick with cancer, there was one day when I said terrible things to her," George said, his voice filled with old pain and regret. "I was so scared of losing her, and I was angry at the whole situation. I told her that she was giving up too easily, that she wasn't fighting hard enough to get better." Emma turned to look at her father with complete surprise. In all the years since her mother had died, George had never told her this story. She had always thought that her parents had handled her mother's illness with perfect grace and understanding. "You never told me that, Dad," Emma said softly. "I thought you and Mum never fought about her cancer." George shook his head sadly. "She forgave me for those cruel words, but I never forgave myself. Even now, 15 years later, I still remember the hurt look on her face when I said them. Words have incredible power, Emma. They can build someone up and make them feel strong and loved, or they can tear them down completely and leave scars that never fully heal." George reached over and took Emma's hand in his weathered fingers. "I see you making the same mistake I made. You're scared about Lucy's future, and that fear is making you say things you don't really mean. But Lucy doesn't understand that your anger comes from love and worry. She only hears the harsh words." That evening, after George had gone to bed, and the house was quiet, Emma sat at her kitchen table with the telephone book open in front of her. She had been thinking all day about what her father had said about the power of words. Emma knew that she needed help learning how to communicate better with Lucy. Emma found the number for a counseling office in town and dialed carefully. A kind woman named Margaret answered the phone and listened patiently as Emma explained her situation. Margaret specialized in helping families work through difficult times and communication problems. "I can see you tomorrow evening after your work," Margaret said warmly. "It takes courage to ask for help, Emma. That's already a good first step." The next evening, Emma sat nervously in Margaret's comfortable office. The room had soft lighting and peaceful paintings on the walls. Margaret was a woman in her 50s with gentle eyes and a calm, reassuring presence. "Tell me what's been happening at home," Margaret said, settling into her chair across from Emma. Emma poured out the whole story. The financial stress, caring for George, the pressure at work, and the terrible fight with Lucy. She told Margaret about the cruel words she had spoken and how Lucy was now shutting her out completely. Margaret listened without judging, nodding her head with understanding. "You're carrying so much responsibility all by yourself, Emma. When people are drowning in stress and worry, they sometimes accidentally pull down the people they love most. I just want Lucy to have better opportunities than I did," Emma said, tears forming in her eyes. "I don't want her to struggle the way I've had to struggle. I understand that completely." Margaret replied gently, But right now, Lucy needs to know that she's loved and accepted for who she is today, not just for what she might become in the future. Margaret helped Emma understand that her harsh words had come from her own deep fears. Emma was afraid that Lucy would struggle financially. Like she had, she was afraid that she was failing as a mother. She was afraid that she could not give her family everything they needed and deserved. Your daughter doesn't need you to be a perfect mother, Emma, Margaret said kindly. She needs a mother who can see her pain and respond with love and understanding instead of criticism and anger. After her first session with Margaret, Emma decided to start making changes in how she treated Lucy. She knew that fixing their relationship would take time and patience. But she was determined to try. The next morning, instead of leaving an angry note about Lucy's messy bedroom like she usually did, Emma wrote something different on a small piece of paper. Hope you have a wonderful day at school today. Love, Mum. Emma wrote in her best handwriting. She placed the note on Lucy's desk where her daughter would see it when she got home from school. Emma also realized that she needed help caring for George, so she would not feel so overwhelmed all the tea. She walked next door and knocked on Mrs. Wilson's front door. Mrs. Wilson was a retired nurse in her 60s who had always been kind to their family. Hello, Emma dear, Mrs. Wilson said with a warm smile. How are you holding up with everything? Emma explained her situation and asked if Mrs. Wilson might be willing to help with George's care to afternoons each week. Mrs. Wilson immediately agreed, saying she would be happy to spend time with George and help him with his exercises and medication. You've been trying to do too much all by yourself, Mrs. Wilson said kindly. Everyone needs help sometimes, and there's no shame in asking for it. With Mrs. Wilson's help, Emma was able to leave work earlier on Tuesday and Thursday afternoons. Instead of going straight home, she decided to volunteer at the local community center. She had seen a sign asking for people to help teenagers with their homework and study skills. Emma thought that working with other struggling students might help her understand Lucy's problems better. She also hoped that helping other people's children might teach her how to be more patient and encouraging with her own daughter. The community center was a busy place filled with young people of all ages. Emma was assigned to work with teenagers who needed help with math and English. On her first day, she met a boy named Tom who was failing algebra just like Lucy was failing math. I'm just stupid at this stuff, Tom said, throwing his pencil down on the table in frustration. I'll never understand it. Emma looked at Tom and saw the same defeated expression that she had seen on Lucy's face recently. But instead of getting angry or impatient like she had with Lucy, Emma felt compassion for this struggling young man. You are not stupid, Tom, Emma said gently. Math is hard for lots of people. Let's just take it one problem at a time and see if we can figure it out. Together, Emma worked patiently with Tom, explaining each step slowly and encouraging him when he got confused. She used simple words and drew pictures to help him understand the concepts. When Tom finally solved a problem correctly, his face lit up with pride and joy. I did it, Tom said excitedly. I actually understand this. Emma smiled and felt a warm feeling in her chest. This was how she should have been treating Lucy all along. These teenagers at the community center were not lazy or ungrateful. They were scared, overwhelmed, and just trying to figure things out in a confusing world. Over the following weeks, Emma worked with many different students. She met Sarah, who was struggling with reading because she had dyslexia. She helped Michael with his history homework even though he had missed many days of school because his family had to move Freck. And Cly, each young person had their own story and their own challenges. Emma began to see that Lucy was just like these other teenagers, Her daughter was not being difficult on purpose. Lucy was dealing with the stress of having her grandfather move into their small house, watching her mother work constantly and worry about money, and trying to keep up with difficult school subjects at the same time. One Thursday afternoon, Emma was helping a boy named David with his math homework when she noticed someone standing in the doorway of the community center. It was Lucy. Looking surprised and curious, Emma's voice was calm and encouraging as she explained a math problem to David. "Don't worry if you don't get it right the first time," Emma said patiently. "Learning takes practice, and everyone learns at their own speed. You're doing great." Lucy watched her mother for several minutes, listening to the gentle tone Emma used with David. This was so different from the harsh, impatient voice Lucy had been hearing at home recently. Emma noticed Lucy watching and looked up with a hopeful expression. "You're really good at this," Lucy said quietly, stepping into the room. Emma felt her heart skip a beat. These were the first kind words Lucy had spoken to her in weeks. "I'm trying to be better," Emma replied honestly, her eyes meeting her daughter's for the first time since their terrible fight. Lucy nodded slightly and then left without saying anything else. But Emma felt encouraged by this small interaction. That evening, after George had gone to bed and the house was quiet, Emma sat at her kitchen table with a pen and paper. She thought carefully about what she wanted to say to Lucy, and then she began to write a letter from her heart. "Dear Lucy," Emma wrote slowly and carefully, "I was wrong. So very wrong about everything I said to you. My words were cruel and completely untrue. You are not selfish or ungrateful. You are my beautiful, wonderful daughter who is trying her best during a very difficult time for our whole family." Emma continued writing, pouring out all the love and regret she had been feeling. "I'm sorry I let my own fears and stress make me forget how to show you love and support. You deserve so much better from me as your mother. I love you exactly as you're right now, and I'm proud of you for so many reasons." Emma signed the letter of always, Mum, and then walked upstairs to Lucy's bedroom. She placed the letter carefully on Lucy's pillow where her daughter would find it before going to sleep. Emma went to bed that night feeling hopeful for the first time in weeks. She knew that rebuilding their relationship would take time, but she was ready to do whatever it took to earn Lucy's trust and love again. 3 weeks had passed since Emma left the letter on Lucy's pillow. During those weeks, Emma continued volunteering at the community center and working with Margaret, the counselor. She had been trying hard to be more patient and understanding, but Lucy still seemed distant and cold. Emma was beginning to worry that the damage she had done was too deep to repair. One evening, Emma was sitting in her bedroom reading a book before going to sleep. The house was quiet, and she could hear George snoring softly in his room down the hall. Emma was having trouble concentrating on her book because she kept thinking about Lucy and wondering if their relationship would ever be the same again. There was a soft knock on Emma's bedroom door. Emma looked up, surprised. Nobody ever knocked on her door this late at night. "Come in," Emma said quietly. The door opened slowly, and Lucy stepped into the room. She was wearing her pajamas and looked nervous but determined. Emma's heart began to beat faster with hope and excitement. "Mom, can we talk?" Lucy asked in a small voice. Emma felt like she might cry with relief. She quickly moved over to make room on the bed for her daughter. Lucy walked over and sat down carefully, but she still kept some distance between them. Emma could tell that Lucy was being cautious and was not ready to trust completely yet. "I read your letter," Lucy said quietly, looking down at her hands instead of at Emma's face. "I read it about 100 times, actually. I kept it in my desk drawer and took it out whenever I felt really sad or angry. Emma started too. Speak, wanting to apologize again and explain everything she had been feeling. Lucy, I want you to know that Let me talk first, please. Lucy interrupted. Her voice stronger and more confident than it had been in weeks. I need to say some things, and I want to get them all out before I lose my courage. Emma nodded and waited patiently. Even though she was desperate to tell Lucy how sorry she was and how much she loved her. I know that you work really hard for our family, Lucy continued. I see how tired you are when you come home from a store every day. I know that taking care of Grandpa is difficult and stressful. I understand that you have a lot of pressure and worry. Lucy finally looked up and made eye contact with her mother. Emma could see pain and sadness in her daughter's eyes, but also a maturity that had not been there before. But when you said those terrible things to me that night, it felt like you hated me, Lucy said, her voice beginning to shake with emotion. It felt like you thought I was the worst daughter in the world and that I was just making your life harder. Emma's eyes immediately filled with tears. She wanted to reach out and hug Lucy, but she could tell that her daughter needed to finish talking first. Oh, sweetheart, Emma whispered. I could never hate you. Not ever. Not for any reason in the world. I stopped trying in school after that night, Lucy admitted, looking ashamed. I thought, what's the point of working hard if Mum already thinks I'm useless and lazy? Why should I bother trying to prove her wrong? Emma felt like someone was squeezing her heart. She realized that her angry words had not just hurt Lucy's feelings. They had actually made Lucy give up on herself completely. Emma slowly reached out and took Lucy's hand in both of hers. Lucy did not pull away, which gave Emma hope. You are not useless, Lucy, Emma said firmly. You are brilliant and kind and funny. You have a beautiful heart and you care about other people. I was so scared that you would have to struggle with money and work like I did that I forgot to tell you how proud I am of who you are right now. Today, Lucy squeezed Emma's hand, and for the first time in weeks, she did not look angry or distant. They talked until well past midnight. Lucy shared her fears about growing up and her worries about not being smart enough for college. She told Emma about feeling lonely and scared when Emma was working long hours and seemed too stressed to talk. Emma talked about her own childhood and how she had to drop out of school when her mother got sick. She explained how worried she was about money and providing for the family. She apologized over and over again for letting her stress and fear turn her into someone mean and impatient. Can we start over? Emma asked hopefully. Can we try to be a real family again? Lucy smiled for the first time in weeks. It was a small, careful smile, but it was genuine and warm. I'd like that very much, Lucy said softly. 6 months later. Their kitchen looked completely different. The bills were still there, and money was still tight, but the atmosphere in the house had changed completely. George sat at the table reading his morning newspaper and chuckling at the funny comics. Emma sat beside Lucy, patiently helping her daughter with a math homework assignment. Lucy's grades had improved significantly, but more importantly, their home was filled with laughter and conversation again. Emma had learned to control her stress and speak kindly even when she felt overwhelmed. You know what I learned through all of this? Emma said to Margaret during what would be their final counseling session. Love isn't just a feeling that we have inside our hearts. Love is a choice that we have to make every single day with our words and our actions. The story ended on an ordinary Tuesday evening when Emma came home from work feeling tired and stressed. She walked into the kitchen and saw dirty dishes piled up in the sink. In the past, she would have immediately started yelling at Lucy for being lazy and messy. But Emma caught herself before the angry words could come out. She took a deep breath, counted to 10, and remembered everything she had learned. Lucy, love, Emma called out in a calm, patient voice. Could you help me clean up these dishes when you have a minute? I would really appreciate it. Small changes, kind words, patience instead of anger. A family healing one conversation at a time. The end.